worthless? Is wisdom worthless? Philosophy Club in A1 this lunchtime.
Philosophy for Children, or P4C, is a method of teaching and learning that focuses on developing thinking skills, quality dialogue and people's values and emotions within a group or community of inquiry. It can be used with any age, any ability and in any subject.
Philosophy for Children began 35 years ago with Matthew Lipman, who was a philosophy professor at an American university. And he found that students who were coming up to study from schools knew a lot, but couldn't think, and in particular couldn't think collaboratively on their feet. And out of despair, really, I think he started to research into why this was. How could young people come through maybe 12, 15 years of education and yet not have the ability to think clearly, work through good dialogue to reach better ideas? So he created a structure through which a teacher or a facilitator could start to develop these skills over time. 35 years later, it's practiced in 60 countries worldwide, and the results have been astonishing, really.
At Kingsbrook School in Milton Keynes, P4C was taken on as part of the Northamptonshire Raising Standards project. In the English department at Kingsbrook, schemes of work have been rewritten to include opportunities for P4C. Today, Karen Lamb is introducing her Year 9 class to Romeo and Juliet using a P4C approach.
As a starter today, I'd like you to explain for me what some of the objects are that you brought into the class. I asked you over half term to go and to do some research into Romeo and Juliet and to come in with something that you felt symbolised or was part of the text in some way. In terms of the aims of P4C and how it relates to our subject area, it lends itself very well because English is discussion based often. The GCSE, 20% of the English mark is a speaking and listening mark, and today's lesson was geared towards that.
I chose the heart because the main theme of Romeo and Juliet is love, and it's in a good way and a bad way because love brings them together and also splits them up.
And the hands on the heart
Help bring them together and push two families away.
Super, thank you. Very good explanation there. Can I just draw your attention to the board? Here are the objectives that we're going to cover this lesson. The focus for the lesson is that it's an introduction to the text Romeo and Juliet. The main focus as well is to really get you to think about why Shakespeare is still relevant today.
The director of Brunel University's Centre for Research in Teaching Thinking is Professor Robert Fisher.
The aim of Philosophy for Children is to help children to think for themselves and to benefit from the thinking of others. It does this through developing what is called a community of inquiry. That is where a class engage in discussion about the topic that they have chosen, and they develop their own thinking, their own communicative skills, their own cognitive skills and their cooperative skills through a process of discussion of a philosophical topic that they have drawn from whatever is the stimulus for that particular lesson.
For the teachers, they'll be looking very much at how are the children learning and making connections then with how am I teaching to promote and foster that learning. And in that sense, they're looking not so much at the particular bit of knowledge that they're hoping to impart or extract from the child, but how that knowledge gets there.
Up on your feet, please. First of all, why do we play Philosopher's Fruit Salad?
Because it gets you to focus more on the task and what we like doing.
Excellent. Why else? Why else do we play Philosopher's Fruit Salad? Amy?
So that we can get to work with people that we don't normally work with.
Super. Right, thinking hats on. Can you change places, please? If you woke up this morning and at some point before you got here, you felt affection for someone, for your parents, siblings, friend at school. Oh, brilliant. It's the sun, isn't it? Sunshine helps. The philosopher's fruit salad we use often, so it isn't a difficult thing. Once you've done it once or twice, it's very easy to then integrate it into your lessons. The use of artefacts we use in English anyway all the time. It relates to symbolism, so we're constantly asking them to think of symbols or visual things that can help them to develop their learning. So in that sense, the planning was enjoyable, it's fun, it's different, it's quite exciting. Okay, thank you very much. You should all be mixed up now. Time to sit down. I'm going to start to take more of a backward step now and move things over to you. But before we do that, can you tell me please, we're in a community of inquiry. We have certain conventions that we abide by when we're in a community. What are those conventions?
Everyone's viewpoint is valid as long as it's appropriate for the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have right and wrong answers. Everybody has a right to a viewpoint and to their opinion.
It's important to distinguish types of question in education. There are those that require specific answers so that you get a correct answer in an exam, for example. And there's absolutely no clash between philosophy for children and the delivery of accurate content that children need to know. I think that disposition of understanding that there may not be final definite answers to things is an important quality for children to understand, and also to know when that happens, when I have a question with no specific answer, that not to know and to inquire into it is a very powerful and useful and natural way of going about it. How do you deal with curiosity and uncertainty? It's the disposition of being open-minded, critical, creative, caring and collaborative with new information.
If I can draw your attention to the board now, please. On the board we've got the colour green. What do we associate with the colour green? Amy?
Envy and jealousy.
Envy and jealousy, excellent.
What teachers seem to say is common to all good, rich stimuli, whether they're visual or aesthetic or contextual or based around narrative text, is that they have a degree of uncertainty about them. There's a degree of vagueness. There's a degree of opportunities for them to invest something of their own thoughts, views, beliefs, experiences.
Now we're on to red. What associations do we have with the colour red? What does it make you feel? Rose?
Reminds me of anger.
Anger, right. And now blue. What does that make you feel? Miles?
It's my favourite colour and it makes me feel relaxed and happy and just quite calm and peaceful.
Higher order thinking is about moving from the literal to the abstract. It's increasing the abstract nature of our thinking so that we move from mere particulars and events in our lives to the organising ideas, which are the concepts. And a good thinking lesson will engage higher order thinking. In other words, it will move from the literal level, from the level of activity, from the level of knowledge, through critical thinking, through creative thinking, to conceptual thinking.
Okay, right, I'm going to turn things on their head now. Right, conventional lessons, what happens is you're asked questions and you find the answers. Now, we're not going to do that in P4C. I'm going to give you the answers. And I want you to come up with the questions. And those questions are what we're going to discuss. Okay, so I want you to think of much broader questions as opposed to very narrow ones.
At the heart of the thinking skills approach in a philosophy for children lesson is think, pair, share. In other words, it's giving students time to think for themselves. It's encouraging paired and small group work and discussion, and it's sharing with the whole community.
Love is the answer to the question. What is the question? And you've got 2 or 3 minutes in your threes to come up with the question and ask one person from the group to come and write it up on the board. Go. You know, you do have to take a backward step and let them lead and develop the lesson in a way. It's very hard to do because we're used to being in control, But I think if you give them the opportunity to do that sort of thing, they relish it, particularly some of the more able.
What feeling do we all have but still take for granted? What is the answer to all problems?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are neglected and stuff. So.
They don't realise they love someone.
Yeah.
It's got to be kind of strong because you can't just have a little question for the answer love.
What makes people care for each other?
Yeah,
And the answer love.
Yeah, that's a good one.
P4C was brought to Kingsbrook by assistant head teacher Celia James.
We wanted to do something for a group of children who were able but fairly quiet in class. And we decided that this group of children, when we looked at monitoring scores, weren't really adding value.
Okay, so that's one answer. The focus of the lesson, if you remember, is about oppositions. Hate now is the answer. What is the question?
When you actually take those children out of their normal lessons and put them all together, it really does build confidence in the group. And we found that they were speaking a lot more, they were thinking more deeply and becoming a lot more outgoing. So we decided then that we would extend that into different year groups.
This is where I take a backward step now, and Miles is going to conduct the next part of the lesson.
What are we scared of in life?
Having heard all of the questions on love and hate suggested by their classmates, the community of inquiry chooses the best topic for discussion through a blind vote.
What emotion can cause both happiness and distress?
What the voting showed was that the students themselves were owning the agenda. They were given the responsibility for the agenda. And one of the special differences in terms of how they did it in that particular lesson was through blind voting, was providing the students with a safe environment to vote and a new way of thinking about democracy.
What causes evil in the world? What emotion stirs up all the anger inside of us?
What I've tried to do with some of the more able in my lessons is to get them involved with the voting process and with organising the reflection and actually deciding on the type of music they think helps them to concentrate better.
It brings out different strengths in people, I think, and encourages them to respect each other.
What feeling do we all use but we really don't understand? Okay, you can open your eyes now. The winner was... What does the world have too much of that it could do without? So Arthur, if you'd like to take over.
Yeah, who wrote that question? Sam, what did you mean by?
All the terrorism and all the hatred going on in the world just at the moment, and it's been going on for years, and it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon.
The prime means for developing intelligence in human beings is not through reading or writing or through doing things, but it's through speaking and listening. That's how we develop our intelligence, that's how we develop our capacity to make meaning, and that's how we develop our capacity to communicate those meanings to others. So at the heart of a successful lesson will be the quality of the speaking and listening that takes place in that lesson.
So do we believe then that there is too much hate in the world?
I think there's too much hate about really stupid things that's so pointless that it's not worth fighting about.
Is there a good way to deal with hate though? Like, is there like a peaceful way where you don't have to include violence in your actions?
Well, going back to what Rose said, where she said there should be an even balance of love and hate, why should there be a balance? Why shouldn't there be no hate at all?
I think P4C has had a real benefit to a lot of students. I think first of all, you can see that it helps them in their thinking processes. It encourages students to think deeper, to think harder, to develop those higher order thinking skills of evaluation, to hypothesize, to say what if, to walk around a topic or a subject and to look at it from all sorts of different angles.
A way of getting rid of excess hate would be to have hate about the little things in life. rather than taking out everybody's hate on one big thing. That could cause a disaster. I think it's better to get rid of hate in little bits.
For boys as well, I think it has a big benefit. It encourages boys to reflect more, to think more deeply, but it also gives them the challenge of taking risks, I think, which appeals to boys. They like to talk. We've discovered that all children like to talk, and there isn't really enough space in the curriculum to do the amount of discussion work that we actually want. It's so content-laden.
I think it's easier for people to feel hate than it is to feel love, because to feel love you have to find the right person. To feel hate, then it's pretty easy if something happens. And
I think love takes a lot longer to achieve. You can hate someone very suddenly for one thing that happens, but love kind of takes a lot more time, and that's why there's less of it around.
What we've noticed is there's a spin-off in the written work, that the written work is more structured as a result of students having listened to all the contributions that people have made in the inquiry.
Very interesting debate there. Now I want to focus the lesson back onto Romeo and Juliet. Why is all the things that we've been discussing, what relevance, why are they relevant to Romeo and Juliet? It's a relaxed environment, a community of inquiry. And I think sometimes within a classroom, because of the barriers of the desk, the students are not able to open up and express their views quite as easily as they can in a forum that is much more relaxed. And because we've built up a mutual respect of P4C and of each other, they're able to voice those opinions in that environment. And as I'm reading and you're thinking about what you've seen in terms of the artefacts, what we've discussed in terms of colour, what we've discussed in terms of the questions and the concepts of love and hate, how do they now relate to the text? What have you learnt today? Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny.
What the lesson did was to provide a framework for students themselves to think about what they do. It provided practice in interrogating a text, but it also provided practice in thinking about concepts that underpin the text and the learning topic.
The fearful passage of their death-marked love and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end naught could remove, is now the 2 hours traffic of our stage. It will be a starting point for the next lesson. And all the way through this whole scheme of work, we will refer back to, and do you remember when we discussed in the P4C session, such and such, you know, so it is actually, it's the bedrock for the whole of the rest of the scheme of work. Okay, we can just have a couple of minutes reflection on what you've seen today, what you've heard today. If you look at the board, I've asked you to listen, question, share, analyse, explore and evaluate. The reflection right at the very end of the lesson. You can see all the different elements of the lesson all coming together, and that's where a lot of the higher order thinking skills are taking place, and that bit is the bit that is so important, that they get time to reflect, to look at the visual stimulus, to listen to the music again, to think about what's been discussed, and to really then formulate one sentence or, you know, their viewpoint. But it's, I think time is the crucial part. But as a teacher, we're all too quick to jump in, and you've got to stand back quite a lot.
I think there are two types of hate. There's the hate that we all experience from day to day, where it's red and it's quick and it's sort of passionate and gives you a rush. But there's the type of hate that lasts a long time, which is black and it's raw and it's emotional.
Excellent, thank you.
I think that love can be more powerful than hate, because even though Romeo and Juliet's families had deep hatred for each other, Romeo and Juliet's love could break through that and could happen.
Super, well done, that's a very good response.
Romeo and Juliet is about love and hate, and it's like an olden day soap opera but more deep and meaningful, and to try and understand those feelings is quite hard, and to see how someone hundreds of years ago interpreting those views is quite interesting as well.
What is unique about Philosophy for Children and that lesson was the focus on inquiry and on pupil questioning. There we saw pupils questioning the concepts of love and hate and questioning the text that they were reading and learning from.
Can I have people please putting their hands up if they think they have managed to reach the must level of on our board? So if you've managed to listen, question, share and reflect today, can you just raise your hand, please? Excellent, well done. I think as a teacher, it's helped me develop immensely. I'm much more able now to stand back and not be quite so didactic and, you know, to be able to listen to them and be involved with their learning in the middle as opposed to on the edge. A quote that was used by Will Ord, it's better to be a guide on the side than a sage on the stage, and I just think that is so important if you're developing young people to be free thinkers and to question the world around them. What I'd like you to do for homework is I'm going to give everybody a blob sheet. So you've got the tree in the middle with the characters climbing up the tree, you know, various stages. What I'd like you to do is to think about your contribution today, but also not just your contribution to the circle, your contribution in your threes. Which character best represents how you have felt during the lesson? Were you down here, just getting started, needing a little bit of help to climb the tree? Today I was actually doing an assessment of the students' speaking and listening skills. If at times it looked passive, I was actually very actively involved in the lesson. Can you please make sure you put your name on the top? This is a speaking and listening exercise that I'm going to be assessing you for, and it will just help me to finalise my views on how well you've done as well.
P4C has proved so popular with students at Kingsbrook that they've even set up their own club to practice philosophical inquiry.
The club really has been, I think, perhaps the driving force at Kingsbrook. It was a lunchtime club. Anyone could come from year 7 to year 13, and the students run it, and they have a kind of a committee. There's even a refreshments coordinator. They run the whole thing completely. They decide on the stimulus, and then they take it through themselves. So they are the facilitator.
You should by now have discussed with your neighbour what feelings and questions that stimulus made you want to ask.
One of them once was connected with cloning, and the caption said, "Do clones have souls?" And I can remember walking across to the club one day, and this was broadcast on the tannoy. Our receptionist broadcast this, "Do clones have souls?" And you could just see the students kind of looking at each other and saying, "Do they? Do they? I'm not quite sure about that. I might go along and find out." And that was absolutely brilliant. We got loads of people coming along because it was so interesting. So I think they pick and choose, and I think they've now got the confidence to come along and say, well, that's for me. I'd like to know a little bit more about that. And perhaps I'd rather spend time relaxing and thinking than running around the playground or doing other things that kids do at lunchtime.
Exams are important, qualifications are important to help you in life, but sitting down at a desk, learning about amino acids and standard deviation ain't going to help you in life. What you need are the skills to talk and communicate and look at problems from different people's eyes. And the only way that you can do that is through discussion. And that's where P4C comes in.
So we've got, can wisdom damage our youth? Can a child be wise? Is knowledge power or is power knowledge? Does a wise person always know the right answer? And does your age affect your wisdom?
Yeah, P4C's benefited me in my English. I'm severely dyslexic, and using P4C with my English has helped develop vocabulary and lateral thinking ways around writing stuff down. All my thought processes are a lot more detailed and organised. So it is helping me with my exams because I can answer questions correctly, whereas I couldn't before.
The older we get, the more we learn about life. Not about anything else, about life. If I was in trouble, I would talk to my friends, but more often than not, I would talk to somebody a lot older than me, because I would see them as knowing more about life and personal skills than I would.
I think there's a great deal of evidence to say, yes, it meets the tick box needs. There's better results, there's better behaviour, there's greater self-esteem. But actually this, I don't believe, is at the heart of P4C, or indeed why we do it. We don't do it for better results. That, if you like, is a happy bonus of doing it. We're really aiming at developing young people into more thoughtful, reasonable, engaged young learners. And that, for us, is wrapped up in this word, wisdom.
Wisdom is inside of you, but knowledge is all around you.
What made the owl wise?
I think there's a real opportunity at the moment to introduce P4C under a range of areas. We've got, for instance, in primary schools, the Excellence and Enjoyment document, which has given permission to schools, if you like, to experiment, but to experiment thoughtfully with the learning opportunities they provide for their children. P4C has been taken on by many primary schools under the guise of excellence and enjoyment. It creates excellence, it involves enjoyment. In the secondary schools too, there's plenty of opportunities through things like the Key Stage 3 strategy to use P4C as an opportunity for widening the learning of students. Within schools themselves, senior managers, I hope, will be able to look at the weight of evidence that P4C can make a real contribution to their children's learning across all subject areas.
The biggest improvement, I'd say, was when I received my CATS results in year 9, I think it was, and there I got 78 out of 78 for the speaking part, and it was just wow. And to think that I've come so far just by talking and listening and thinking, it's amazing.
It's a methodology, I think, that you need to perhaps train teachers in a little bit more. But once they are trained, they can feel confident to do that. I mean, we ran training sessions at Kingsbrook for the Level 1 SAPARE qualification. And students trained alongside teachers in that. And also on our training day, our students trained our new staff.
As education continues, I think we're seeing much more emphasis and recognition of thinking skills being central to making quite a leap in the quality of not only what's learned, but how it's learned, and the qualities, if you like, the virtues of the people who come out at the end of the process.